Welcome back to Whitt Acres. Tomorrow is going to rain and today is beautiful and windy, so hopefully you can hear me. We've had a string of nice days, but today is the last one. So tomorrow morning they're calling for rain. So today we're clearing the food forest. So my food forest isn't very foresty right now, but it's young and I'm working on getting it filled up with a bunch of perennial fruiting plants so I can have year after year food production out of this area. So right now I have perennial berries and fruiting trees in here, as well as growing a bunch of annuals during the summer. It's hard to see because everything is brown out here, but I have a bunch of dead vines from the tomatoes on here, as well as marigold flowers left over and a ton of sunflowers going along the potato row. So I'm going to come in here and just clean out all these annuals and get them to the compost. And then I'm going to come through and find any of the volunteer berries that I see here and dig them up so they don't get crushed over by the mulch that I dump here. So I don't like to bring the backhoe on this front side of the food forest between the island and over in the center here because it is a lot wetter. This side of the food forest is just a lot wetter and it never really dries out enough to get the weight of the backhoe over here without sinking. I already have a hole there from the last time we brought the backhoe in, and the mower has to bounce through it every time I go past it. So I'm just going to be dumping the wood chips on this one side. I'll pile them all up and then I'll move them with a shovel or pitchfork and a rake and get them all spread across the rest of the food forest by hand. It's going to take a lot of time to make this food forest the way I want it, but I have to take it step by step, and today's step is cleaning it up and dumping a bunch of wood chips here because we just got a fresh pile of wood chips. And I want to get them moved so if another pile comes, they have a place to dump them. And I'm going to try not to kill any volunteer plants or any of my plants that I have dormant along the way. There's a lot of volunteer privet in here as well that I'm going to have to pull out because I don't want to keep those. I also have a chives right here that's starting to sprout up, so I don't want to be burying that. Try and mark that with a stick. And my yucca isn't much of a food for us, but you can see the deer like eating on it. They chomped this one all the way back, so I'm not gonna bury that one either. So I need to get started with this because I'm also using the backhoe to build the goat pen behind the barn. So if you want to see any of that, go ahead down in the description and check out my Whitt Acres homestead channel. Let's get started. right, hopefully you can hear me. My mic stopped working, so I'm gonna try and get this done before the wind picks up again. We got the food forest cleaned up, and I used my machete to do a lot of the work here. It's probably one of the most underrated garden tools that I use. I wanted to do a lot of the chop and drop. If I could break it up and leave it on the ground, chop and drop it, then I did. If I couldn't bury it with this new layer of wood chips, then I threw it in the wheelbarrow, and I'll be taking that wheelbarrow down to the compost. I looked along this whole outside because this is where I'm gonna be pounding up the wood chips, and I did find this volunteer here, and it's rooted into the ground 3 different spots. So it starts in the middle there, and it loops around back to the ground here, and then on the other side it does the same thing. So this thing is spreading nicely, but it is in the wrong spot, and I don't want to bury it. I also have some Tokyo long bunching onions that are here that I left in, so I think they're going to come back this year. I'm just going to go ahead and cover them, and then whenever I rake everything back smooth, I'll be able to uncover them, and I think they'll poke back up. The wind has been picking up, and it is blowing all these leaves down and into my pond, so I'm going to try and get these covered up with some wood chips. If you want the winter to warm up into spring, you're going to have some wind, because wind comes from temperature change. As the sun warms up the earth, the air rises, and then the cold air rushes in to replace it. So the wind is a good sign for spring, but it's not too good for the audio. Time to start the backhoe. You coming, pup? Good boy. All the wood chips dumped in here that I have so far. I might need more than this to actually cover the whole food forest, but I got them dumped in here, and that's what I wanted to do today. So I'll be spreading these out whenever I find time later on. But now I'm going to take the backhoe up and start working on the goat enclosure before it gets too muddy here tomorrow. I can always spread these out after it rains, but I want to get the backhoe up to behind the barn so I can work on the goat enclosure before it does start raining. The backhoe's already starting to dig in over here on this side of the property, so it's really only going to get worse after tomorrow. I gotta pick up all the weeds up and put them back in the wheelbarrow now because the wind blew that over. But I'll bring you back whenever I start spreading. Looks like I got the wood chips moved just in time. I've been going through the gardens bit by bit trying to get them all cleaned up by the time spring comes around. I got the pond bank cleaned up yesterday, and it's looking nice and clean. I also did a video on the cold frame sowing to try and get some early vegetables coming, but the pond is taking a beating with all these leaves. Many of them are actually 99% of these leaves are all oak leaves, and I don't have any oaks blowing leaves into my pond. It's all the neighbor's oaks. And all these leaves are coming from one tree at my neighbor's house. It's not even my tree. I also don't have any water at the barn, so I had to bring the backhoe down so I could fill up some buckets to take up. Hopefully we get a good enough rain tomorrow. It fills up all my rain harvest tanks at the barn, but until then I gotta bucket some water up from the house. Me and Echo are out here on another day of this food forest cleanup. I'm getting all the berries, volunteer berries dug up, and as you can see, I'm getting a lot. My thornless, I believe it's the triple crown blackberry. Hey pup, you popped your ball. So I think it's the triple crown blackberry, and it has been dropping down and re-rooting constantly. I didn't do much in here last year, and it rooted a bunch. Like one there. This is actually a group of 4 here, because it just came right from that one and spread out to 4 different plants here. And then I dug up a bunch out of this area as well that started jumping around. So I'm going to have a bunch of extra blackberry bushes. I'm probably going to plant some of these around the property so I can just let them go wild, probably along the edges or maybe up behind the barn somewhere. But I also can probably pot up some of these and try and sell them. I'm going to have probably a dozen of these blackberry bushes, so I'll be able to do some things with these. I even have, I think, another raspberry bush, but I'm going to have to let that grow out before I can actually tell what it is. It's starting to sprinkle out here, but I'm just working on getting these wood chips spread out, these berries out, and then I can move on to the vegetable garden and get the wood chips spread down there. And we didn't even use all the wood chips yet, so we piled up some over there by the fence so I can get some other things done. We ended up getting a good resource from the wood chips. They're working somewhere local and they're dropping a bunch near us, so we're getting a bunch and our neighbor's getting a bunch, and I'm trying to get enough to cover all the gardens that I want to cover with natural wood chips, and then have some piled up left over for some fall coverage and for some other projects that I might use wood chips for, with maybe the animals too. I got the pergola area done, and once I get this food forest finished up here, I'll be heading down to the vegetable garden so I can get all the wood chips moved down there. It's getting dark out here, so it's hard to focus on it, but I'm getting some nice growth on my honeyberry. These usually bloom and bring in some berries before the blueberries even do. And I even like them more than the blueberries, so I might have to get some more of these for the food forest. What are you doing, puppy? Good boy, puppy. And there is the last bit of wood chips that I needed to spread across the food forest here. I still have some more piles, and that's just going to be used to thicken up this layer, but I wanted to get a full top layer on here, help hold the leaves down, and to just start the new season of composting the old wood chips. I also got 16 of these blackberries out of here, and one of the raspberries. This is a raspberry. So I got one extra raspberry and 16 blackberries. The daffodils and the hellebores are already coming up and starting to bloom. This video ended up being a pretty long process trying to get all these wood chips spread. I could dump some of them on the far side of the food forest, but then I had to move a lot of them over with the, hey puppy. I had to move a lot of them over with the wheelbarrow and the pitchfork. So it was a long process, and I finally got it done. I'm not sure what happened, but I kneeled down and now I have searing pain in my knee. So I'm gonna pack up all these pots of berries into the wheelbarrow, take them into the patio where they're not gonna freeze solid out here. And that's gonna be all for this one. If you like nature, go ahead, subscribe down below. Hit that like button before you leave. You can see me and Echo on the next one. Thanks for watching.